Oh
And we're
yeah.
recording.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to week 3 or 4 of SEO Recon Mastermind. We're gonna go through some tiered linking stuff today. Just do a quick little intro. I'm sure you know who Mark and Michael and I are if you're on the webinar, but Mark, I mean, basically as a young child, he cracked the code to get free soda from vending machines. Works out underwater with manatees in Florida and moonlights as the SEO Recon Mastermind mascot. So that's Mark, and Michael, aka the M&M SEO Ninja, fights pandas and penguins with throwing stars and sleeps only 16 minutes per day on a bed of psychokinetic kelp. Um, And then, of course, there's me, Jacob Kettner. I have a bachelor degree in marketing. I own an SEO agency in Winnipeg, and I just like testing stuff. So together, that's we make up SEO Recon Mastermind. Um,
I,
yeah, I think
I,
that's
I,
it for pretty
I
quickly.
think that was an awesome intro, man. Thank you
That was
for
the
that.
best intro ever, yes. I am definitely
All
honored
right.
to be on this webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could have added that I lift heavy shit in the gym. I mean, we can add that in. I work hard for that, Jacob, but that's fine. Otherwise, perfect.
Oh, I said you work out underwater with manatees in Florida.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just lifting manatees underwater. But
uh, and I have actually had a little bit of an intro for Penguin 4 too, which I discussed a little. But basically, well, it's not funny anymore now that we talked about it. But the thesis of it was that it's basically the Y2K of 2016. Um, it doesn't seem to have been a major impact. There's no looting of the streets, no school buses rolled over, no one's throwing women and babies out windows, and
right.
we're okay. So anyway, but I'd love to see some penalized sites. Anyway, let's dig in. I hope this isn't like the first local client takeover webinar that anybody watches, just like their introduction. All right.
I hope it
Um,
is.
so actually, I want to go into tiered linking. I know I've got some cool stuff to share, both on just like overall like what tiered linking actually is and how you should look at it because I think a lot of people really have misconceptions about what it actually does. Um, and then some actionable stuff of how to implement tiered linking. I know Michael does a lot of tiered linking. I think he does more top heavy pyramids. I'll let him talk about that. I do more, or no, sorry, bottom heavy pyramids. I do more top heavy pyramids. We'll talk about
Mhm.
that. Um, and then I guess I just wanted to throw something out there too before we get into tiered linking. This is something I don't have like a concrete answer to this yet. It's something that I've been playing with today and looking at. But I was talking to Michael and Mark about it earlier, and I just want to throw out to the community if you're doing map stuff, um, I noticed today that if you like, I think a lot of people try to set their for service-based businesses try to set their radius as large as possible to capture the most area, which makes sense from one perspective because then people searching in a wider area will find your listing. But I had an interesting listing that I was having some trouble with, and it wasn't showing up when I searched for city plus keyword. But if I zoomed out on the map, then it was like showing up near the top. Um, and I looked at a number of top ranking maps stuff today, uh, and just looked at what their radius settings are, region settings, like just in different niches in different cities. And pretty consistently, they have radiuses, uh, no larger than 30 and frequently in like the 15-mile range. And it seems to be about half and half region and um, using the region setting or the radius setting. Um, but if you're hitting stuff with a 50-mile or 100-mile radius and it's not ranking, that's something to consider adjusting. Again, I said I just started looking into that today, but I did go through, maybe 20 or 30 searches and looked at the top ranking map stuff in those
Uh,
areas, and that's what
That's
I found.
interesting.
But yeah, just something to keep an eye on. Anyway, not related to the tiered linking. Where do you want to get started for tiered linking?
I think maybe before we even get started on tiered linking, I'd like to give an update on what we talked about last week with that Huffington Post
Oh,
link.
yeah, okay.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not going to take up a bunch of time. I'm really not driving this webby, as you guys can tell. So I'll try to keep it concise. Um, Basically, last week, just like a very quick summation, we had there was a big to do over these contributor accounts. And, there's a whole series of things you can do to try to get them indexed and to try to get the link to be do follow. And, I'm just not sure. That's cool, right? We didn't do any of that. So we got a contributor account and we created an article. And just to give a tiny bit of backstory, it's a national client, national keyword. We're actually tracking it in the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. Right? So cool stuff. We used an exact match anchor for it's a two. It's not like a long tail either. It's 2 words, right? It's the product and the product. It's like the type of product and telling you what type of product it is, right? It's like black hat, right, or a green hat, which it's not green hat obviously, but it's that, right? It's
Yeah.
very it's not like long tail, like, oh, well, that can rank with good on page. I mean, I think it gets 18,000 searches a month, if I'm not, just in the U.S., I think. Could be wrong. It's something incredible, though. It gets a very large amount of search volume. So we use the exact match in the Huffington Post. Again, if you look at the source code of the HuffPo article, it is a no index. It's not even, like, it's not indexed in Google, right? So what we did is after we took the article, I submitted it through Google to make sure it gets crawled, right? Because we talked about this last week in the you've been lied to Webby, that just because something is an index doesn't mean it's not in Google's larger cache, and it doesn't mean it's not getting crawled. Like Michael and Jacob were talking about the PBNs, and Mike said if you look in the Google Analytics, you can see your de-indexed PBNs getting crawled every day, right? So they're still getting crawled. So we want to make sure it got crawled and kind of quantify from there. So we saw uptick. We saw a
Hey,
bunch of
hey,
upticks
Mark,
from that.
maybe you could just say how did you get it crawled by Google? Like
I,
where
I,
did you
I,
submit it?
I went right to the Google Submit where you put the URL and then click Submit. I, it's I don't know the exact URL.
I
But
just I just thought that might be a question somebody may have.
yeah, so it wasn't actually like even through like an index or anything, right? Or like social stuff. Like I wanted to put it directly through Google's system just because I feel like I wanted to be reassured that it was going to get crawled, right? I want that link to get crawled. Um, so we did that. We saw an uptick right away, and I checked, and this is a keyword we didn't do much with, okay? Like this isn't something we were optimizing. It was a secondary, right? And that's another reason I wanted to test it. I wanted to try to control the test as much as possible. So I used a secondary keyword that there wasn't a bunch of PBN links for. The on page is not even the best. I think it's a little over optimized considering it's more of like a commerce site. I know Jake and I were talking about that too. But I checked again, and there was even a larger jump, and we're now sitting at number 4, and it's in the rank tracker. I also, checked from an incognito window, and I was logged out and everything. I wanted to make sure, kind of verify the ranking, and all we did again was that one no index link on the HuffPo article. I didn't build links to it or anything. Submitted it through. Thanks for that link, Brian Wade. Google.com/webmasters/tools/submit-URL ? ? That's the URL I submitted it to. But and that's it. And I mean, we saw just a massive gain from that. So I wanted to update you guys. At this point, I think I'm going to do a more controlled test. I'm going to do this again with another site, another keyword, and I'm actually going to run a ton of links to the article as well. And I'm going to quantify the results I get from that. So, having said that, you can take back over, Jacob. I just know I'm looking through a lot of the same faces that were on last week, so I want to kind of update everyone on that specific test.
Sure. Okay. Cool. So I just want please cut me off if I get a little bit too ranty about this, but this is there's just some wrong nomenclature that gets used about tiered linking all the time that drives me crazy. Specifically, when people talk about sending links through a buffer site. Um, like, you don't send links. You can't send a link through a site. You can link to a site, and you can link from that site to another site. Unless we're talking unless we're talking about 301s, you can use 301s as buffers. Um, but basically, can I just grab the screen for a second?
Oh yeah, I'll just let me.
Yeah, I'm actually trying out a new mind mapping software that Michael Milas recommended to me.
It's all you.
Can you see my screen?
No,
Yeah, not yet.
I need to select show my screen.
that would be.
There's a little drop down there. Show my drop down. Um, interesting. But I need to choose the correct screen. Hold up.
Jesus.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
The mind mapping software.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the Skype message where Matt's talking about pouring wax on his body. God almighty. God, I'm done. I'm done. Just you guys go. I'm done.
So much visual imagery. All right. So is everyone looking at Paint right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Instead of the Skype message about Matt pouring hot wax
Okay.
on his body.
Perfect. Thanks. So I wasn't joking. I have like zero experience using Paint. I probably want to use the pencil. Nope. No. Do not want to use the pencil.
Use the little circle and line tools.
Michael, this software sucks.
Why would anyone recommend Paint? First of all? Shame on the pair of you.
I was really
There we
joking
go.
when I said pain.
Oh my
All right.
God! I knew you weren't serious. That is cruel.
I mean, it works though. It gets the job done.
Yeah, no, this is going to be perfect. All right. So first of all, if you have a site here linking to your money site, here's your money site that you want to rank, and you have a link to this site, and then you build, 10 links into this site. This is a pretty standard, like, tiered link building picture. And like we're still, no matter how many links we send to this page, this is still only one link going to the money site. And like I think when it's drawn out like this, it's obvious. But I think people get people are like, okay, like when you see pyramid pictures, it's like, okay, they're going to build 5 tier 1 links and then like 20 tier 2 links and like 10,000 tier 3 links. And like you feel like you're sending a lot of juice to your site, and you might be increasing the authority of your 5 tier 1 links, but they'll only ever be as good as one really good link each. And I really want to stress that, because I think people spend too much time hitting a single tier 1 link with tier 2 links, thinking that that's going to give them a huge increase. And if it's, there's times to do it and there's times not to do it. So for me, it really comes down to domain authority. And, I don't mean the MOSMET, the authority of the overall domain, but we can, we'll use the MOS metric because it's easy to use. So if this is, if this link is on a really authoritative domain, but it's on a brand new page. So let's say a guest post. This is a guest post on Huffington Post, but it's a brand new page. Then it's passing a lot of trust because it's coming from a trusted authoritative domain, but it's not passing a ton of juice because no links coming into this page, giving it page authority. So in that case, it's really easy. You already have that trust, and you really can send in, one link to this page can increase the authority of that page a lot, which increases the strength of this link. Um, and so that's something that I'll do a lot with guest posts is I don't want to spam it. I don't need to hit it with hundreds or thousands of crappy links, but I'll send one or two PBN links into tier one, and that will increase the page authority, which increases the value of this link. Are you getting as much value, if you send 3 PBN links to this tier 1 property as if you send 3 PBN links directly to your money site? It depends. It depends on the authority of the domain that this link is on, right? So, I'd say you get diminishing returns on scale. So 3 maybe. If I built 20 high-quality PBN links to my tier 1 property, I'm still only getting 1 really quality link out of that. So in that case, I think you'd be much better off sending 20 high-quality PBN links to the main site. That said, sending 1 high-quality PBN link to your tier 2 could increase the authority enough to make this link, stronger than this link without being juiced up and this link directly, right? So, that's kind of where I wanted to go with theory. I wanted to squash the idea of buffer sites because they don't exist. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was if you're doing, so there's basically like a bottom-heavy pyramid would mean that what is bottom-heavy? I always mix up my top-heavy and bottom-heavy. So bottom-heavy means that your strongest links go at the bottom. So you'd have your guest posts and PBN links and like your really strong stuff is directly linked to your money site. And then as you go up the pyramid, the number of links increases, but it gets they become lower quality. So your tier, this is fairly common. Your tier 2 might be Web 2.0, and then your tier 3 might be GSA blog comments. So that's like your typical bottom-heavy pyramid, and those. I guess what I just wanted to mention is like I think people get too paranoid about this stuff. I love hitting my tier 3s with GSA, and it's never. I shouldn't say never, but if you do it right, it shouldn't affect. It shouldn't put your money site at risk at all, because if we're building 10,000 links up at this level, and every link that we build has, say we link to, like from this campaign, we link out to, let's say these are contextuals. Let's say our tier 3 is contextual, just to make things simple. And then say tier 4, we use like blog comments and stuff back. So then the reason I'm saying contextual is because we control all the links on the page. If it's blog comments, then we're getting links on a page that has other links on it, which is even better for diversification. But let's say contextual. So let's say on each of our top or bottom last tier contextual links, we build a link to our tier 2 property and also 2 links to authority or relevant outbound sites. So now we have 30,000 links built, and 10,000 of those links are going to our tier 2 properties. Do you see where I'm going with this? So of those, the other 20,000 links, we have this is 10,000, we have the other 20,000 are going here and here, and these are properties that we don't own or control that also link out to tons of other properties down here. And then in our tier 2, we do the same thing. We use 1 link to our money, or to our 1 link to our tier 1, and we use 2 links to random other sites down here. And basically, my point is that if you try to reverse engineer and go back up from a money site and say this site has a lot of tier 3 links coming in from spammy sites, so does every other website on the internet. Like, if you have links to your website, you have spammy tier 3 links, guaranteed. So from that perspective, um, you know, at that level, it's fairly safe to get pretty aggressive. And again, it's not Google's not saying, oh, you have 10,000 links filtering into your site. They're not filtering in. They're linking to these sites, which are linking to these sites, which are also linking to all of these sites over here, and happen to be, your site just happens to be part of that web. Um, this is a terrible drawing, but I think if you're following me, it should make sense. Uh, and then I guess the other thing, that you should be aware of is what's really easy for Google to do is look at it from a bottom-up perspective. So if they say, okay, your site only has 90% of the links going to this site are from sites that are only getting spammy links, and those are 90% of those are getting, it becomes a quality score thing. So each of these sites have very low quality scores, these sites have very low quality scores, these sites have very low quality scores, and if that's where all of your links are coming from, your site is going to have a very low quality score. That said, if you're just trying to influence, for say map stuff, there's a number of ways that you can apply this, and I'll give some actionable ideas of how I use it later on. If you're using it just to sculpt topical relevance, or for citations and map stuff like that, then sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Then what's happening is your money site doesn't have 90% of its profile is from high quality links, and it happens to have a very intelligently selected 10% of its profile coming from spammy sites, which, coming from tier 3 spammy sites, which every other site on the internet also has 10% of its profile coming from. Ours is just crafted in a way to sculpt the topical relevance of the site in the way that we want to sculpt it. So that, do either of you have anything to add to that? That's kind of my overview. And then I can go into some actionable stuff later, but if either of you want to go into theory.
Well, yeah, someone asked here that you're hitting tier 3s with GSA. So, that's technically like an example of something that I do often is I'll have the money site at the middle, and then if you link from a PBN and your PBN has an IFTTT network or Facebook page or WordPress page, and then you're tier linking that WordPress page is
Right.
kind of one way that you could set this up. So, it's technically a tier 3 link, yes, like your spammier links is the tier 3.
Right.
Oh man, this is painful. Nice work.
Thanks. Did you want to add anything to that, Mark? Or should we go
No,
into some actionable stuff? Or...
Jacob Van Gogh.
All right.
Yeah, that's the most common way I usually do it now. Or someone said that they sent 20,000 links to their Web 2.0 Tier 1. I do that with citations, but that's a little bit different kind of understanding. Do you do a lot of that, Jacob? Mass tiered linking to like a WordPress or a Weebly or anything like that that goes directly to your money site?
No. No, I'll tell
Yeah.
you, there's two ways that I use tiered linking on a regular basis. And one is when I start a new campaign with a client that has existing links, I'll send tier 2 links to their high authority properties. So if they have like a Chamber of Commerce link or stuff in there that's on relatively crappy, not kept up sites, but that's high authority and gives Google good signals, and I won't spam that stuff. I'll hit that with like 1 or 2 PBN links. That's my tier 2, and then I don't do a tier 3 on it. I'll go through. I'll pick out my favorite links that the client already has and give them a little bit of a secondary boost, and then sometimes some social signals to those too, but not spammy linking. The other way would be for map stuff mostly. Is basically I use FCS Networker for this, and I wonder if I can start a new board here. There we go. Do I want to save this? No.
Well,
um,
there goes our downloadable for the Webby.
um, so with FCS, basically, I'll build 100 or any number, whatever, of high quality as far as automated goes, better than GSA, Web 2.0s that have, uh, although it can be spun content, and I build those to not, they don't have links to the money site, but they'll have authority outbound link, they'll have topical relevance, and they'll have a link to um, one of my tier one trust building links, which is, I should say what that is first, I guess. So, sorry, I'm a little bit roundabout here. So my tier one trust building links are press releases, citations, um, and social profiles mostly. So if you're using a service, you're talking about like your IFTTT network, your list of citations, and your press release report. So I'll copy and paste all of those URLs into FCS Networker, and I could actually do like a show how I do it maybe another time because I don't have it set up right now. So we have all of it. We have our money site. We have all of our trust building links coming in from press releases and citations. Then I build like 100 unstructured citations. So that's these guys. So they have the name, address, phone number of the business, and an embed. Well, okay, 100% of them have the name, address, phone number of the business in them, as well as the content. And then I start getting into percentages. So a percentage of these will get links to these profiles. So these are tier 2 links, but they're tier 1 citations. And then a percentage of these will get the map of the business embedded on them, as well as the link, or not link, sorry, as well as this link and the NAP citation. And then a percentage of these, usually a very low percent, will actually have a link to the Google My Business profile, but like super low percent, no anchor text on those. It's usually just below the citation. And then, so it's a tier 1 citation, tier 2 also linking to other citations and other trust building profiles. And then tier 3 here, I go crazy with GSA on these. GSA, mostly blog comments. I should mention, if you're going to do GSA, get it in a far enough tier that you are comfortable using blog comments, and use blog comments. Blog comments are super strong links because they're on existing index, they're on pages with existing index age, with links coming into them, with page rank, with page authority, however you want to look at it. They're on existing strong pages that are indexed in Google. If you do a contextual campaign, then you are setting yourself up to have to do a tier 4, which is fine, but then your tier 3 is contextuals and your tier 4 is blog comments. Like if you're running GSA for indexing purposes, you should be using blog comments because if you're using contextuals, then you have to run an indexing campaign on your contextuals to get them indexed anyway. So GSA, blog comments, I hit these with. So that's my typical, like the extent of tiered link of what I said this was top heavy or bottom heavy. This is the extent of my bottom heavy link building for a client campaign, is basically tier 2 citations and links to my tier 1 trust building links, and then blog comments to those contextuals.
Yeah,
What's...
very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Either of you wanna hop in here or add something, contradict me?
I was just looking at some of the, so I mean, it's very similar to what I do. I mean, I used to actually bring the GSA down a level and just had that all on tier 2, but yeah, over the past year, I've moved it up, especially for client sites and stuff like that. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on the blog comments too. That's really where the power comes behind using GSA. Because I used to use pretty much the same exact thing, but I used FCS Networker and then GSA behind that, which was mostly blog comments, which is essentially the same thing as a contextual, GSA campaign and then blog comments. But
Right. Yeah, I find FCS will do slightly higher quality stuff. Although there's an add-on for GSA. I forget what it's called. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It adds like 20 Web 2.0 engines, and it basically does what FCS does.
no, actually, I'm not familiar with that. I used to have
Yeah.
FCS actually run through, like hook up. GSA would hook up to FCS though, and then just link to the campaigns as they'd run. I don't know if you've ever
Okay.
run it
No,
like that before.
I've never played with that, but that's a cool idea. It would save a step for me of exporting the links files and then importing them into GSA.
For sure. Um, I don't do okay. If I do second tier, it's usually for indexing purposes. Um, I just most of my stuff's local, and I feel like I have the infrastructure to make up the ranking power on the first tier with my networks and my relationships with people who have networks. So I'm admittedly personally not a huge tiered linking guy outside of, like I said, indexation. I do work in office with Chaz, and I know he does a lot of cool stuff where his is typically, well, obviously we do the tiered stuff for indexation as well, but he does stuff with 301s quite a bit. And another thing, we've been talking about for a long time. I guess this is some people's like secret sauce, but if you get a decent guest post, and then we set about 100 FCS to drip out to the guest post, and then because the thing with the guest posts are, if you have a 301, um, there's kind of two components to that. It either already is expired, already has power, right, and then you just 301 it. And the other route is kind of convincing Google it's topically relevant to your money site, and then 301ing it and hitting it with links, right? So there's two different kind of paths we can travel there. And it's the same thing with the guest posts, for instance. That by themselves they have the domain authority, like Jacob was talking about earlier. But aside from that, they can really benefit from linking. And we don't do a very pretty, not pretty like Jake's paint picture by any means, but we don't do a very extravagant. I guess would be a better word. An extravagant tiered campaign. It's usually, about 100 FCS links that drip out over about 30 to 40 days, and then we'll drop 5, 10, 15 PBNs behind that, and a lot of times the PBNs are not the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme,
Mhm.
as one might say. It's I'm not nearly as concerned with the quality of the PBN because it's touching an authoritative site. The DAs, you know, not that I'm huge on metrics, but for argument's sake, the DAs, between 45 and 90. So I'm not really concerned about a huge quality score kind of flowing through and affecting my my money site. At the same time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend blasting them. I'm sure there are people that do that. So actually, I do know people that use GSA on guest posts successfully. It's just not my cup of tea. So that's
Yeah.
actually, and that's not theory. That's actually what he does too. So you guys can take that to the bank with the FCS and PBNs behind the guest posts, and he does the same thing on the 301s as well. So it's a really killer tactic.
hmm
Mhm.
Yeah, I meant to say that too. Like for my when I'm talking about building PBN links as tier twos to juice up existing links, they're not my high quality auction domains. Like I'm usually swapping for them or buying them from vendors that I like off of Fiverr or Source Market or Web20 Ranker. Even I mean I'd use Web20 Ranker, but they're probably even too high quality for for what you need. Like um, but they're cheap, so give her. But and then I guess the other thing I didn't mention, the other place that I use tier two PBN links is to my PBN posts. So if I have a brand new, if I especially scrape stuff, like if I pick up a PBN that's been de-indexed for 5 years and then suddenly I build it out, I'm linking out from it. I mean, first of all, I'll run the backlinks of the PBN through an indexer and maybe hit them with some light Web 2.0 stuff, just so that the pages, instead of um, trying to get the PBN, sending stuff directly to that, I'm sending stuff to all the pages that are talking about it, just like building tier 3 relevance. And then also I like to link to occasionally, say you build an article. So you have a client that's uh, say you have a client that's a photographer, but you want to link to them from a PBN site that's themed around real estate. So you get your writer to write you an article that's about real estate photography to tie it in together. Then I'd get a link from, a PBN link back to that post on the PBN with anchor text like about real estate photography. First of all, because if that ranks for any long tails and actually gets traffic, then my PBN's a lot stronger. But secondly, it makes sense to me that the old links still have juice, but getting those new links in there. I haven't done a controlled test on this, but I do it. And then those posts are getting topical relevance, especially if you've rethemed your domain for the PBN site. So I think you do some of that stuff, right, Michael? With the tier
Yeah,
2s to PBNs.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's especially when I'm working in more a competitive space. But um, the most important thing really to point out is that the whole tiered linking concept is a lot of people overcomplicate it, but it's really just the foundation of SEO. Even when you're just buying a PBN, you're buying a site that has tiered links to it already, and then the quality of that site is defined by the quality of links that are going to it. And that's why when you were talking before about why you don't just send 30,000 links to like a WordPress page or something is because you just have one link from that WordPress page, and if you have just a bunch of low quality links, it's not really, it's not doing anything. So, looking at it from just the perspective of building quality links from quality sites as it goes out into tiers, whether Mark's strategy where he has more of the, kind of the not trusted stuff on the back end kind of PBN, or whether you're building PBNs on the front and then building relevance and power around those, it kind of all comes down to just understanding of risk and how you're really building that authority. I mean, I have sites that I've ranked with just building like 120 PBN links, just dripping them out, until the thing ranks pretty much, and then you're just focusing on anchor text and the amount of content on the site and things like that. But yeah, sorry, I went off a little bit on a rant there. Building links to my PBNs is definitely something I like to do, but more so in like high competitive spaces. If you're in like lower medium comp, kind of areas, your time and energy is better focused on just getting some better quality links. You know what I mean? Like you don't really need too much to kind of rank in those spaces anyways. So most of the tiered linking stuff like this, I'm usually talking about a more competitive scenario, not just kind of little suburbs or things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I want to address this question really quick. Brian asked, so you're saying there's a difference in quality between GSA campaigns, like a $2 campaign versus a $30. Yeah, so let's take the price tags off it because those price tags are arbitrary, right? But there's different setups of a GSA campaign that they're all going to be a bit different. Okay, so there's the first thing you need to consider is the velocity of what you're going to send and where you're sending it, right? So if you have a local site and you hit that local site with 30,000 links, that looks unnatural, right? And I know a lot of people that did a lot of parasite rankings saw this as well, where you used to be able to run GSA campaigns to Yelp pages and you'd have your client phone calls within a few weeks, right? Max. I mean, we've had results even much faster, right? I mean, GSA to Yelp, we used to be able to front page stuff in a few days in some cases, right? And we started to see just diminishing results with that, where it might cause a spike in rankings and then the drop off would be massive, right? So it's the same type of deal. Like the first thing's velocity. The second is the link targets, right? Like what platforms you're building links on. If someone just runs everything like, hey, we're going to try to make. If someone's charging you $2, they're not doing much customization on the campaign. The articles are just everything's just like fresh out of the box, right? Like they're going to copy and paste the keywords you gave them. They're going to copy and paste the URL and press go. You know what I mean? You're not going to get much out of that. So having said that, I would just, the velocity's big, how you tier them's big, but at the same time, like Jacob said, if someone's just pressing go on it, you're going to get a very cookie cutter response in the SERPs. But
The list is pretty big too.
oh yeah, for sure. And at the same time, it's what's the point of the links? Do you want to do like indexing? Then, people that are building a lot of contextuals, that might not make as much sense as one would think, because like Jake said, you have to go through the hassle of making sure they index. It's like you're doing twice the work, and so there's a lot of components, and there's definitely guys that charge top dollar for GSA. I mean, you wouldn't touch. I don't even think you touch them at a $30 campaign. Some of the guys I know doing GSA, they're charging hundreds of dollars per setup. Just because they paid for a quality list or they make their own, and they set each campaign up so each tier is getting hit with like an intelligent velocity and dripped out, and that takes up server space. The longer they have your campaign running, it all is just overhead for them, right? So, is that?
Is that a Star Wars scene right there?
Sorry, I'm listening, Mark.
That's an X-wing. That's an X-wing fighter.
Yeah, that most definitely is.
Huh. Well, that's an asshole. So the answer
Just
is yeah.
to get your downloadable webinar.
There's absolutely going to be a difference. So, if what indexer do you use? I've been having trouble finding one that's effective, especially for sites with a large number of pages.
GSA. Best indexer out there.
Blog comments.
Yep. Links on indexed pages.
Right.
Yeah. I also, I thought of one more way that I use tiered linking. I guess I use it more than I thought I did. Is for, and I know Michael's talked about this before too. I like to pick up scrape domains. Like I use mostly like auction domains now for like passing juice. But I'll still pick up scrape domains for local relevance, and I'll often or with like pick up stuff with the keyword in URL. And I still I mean, I'm sure you can do it with new domains, but I'd prefer if it's old and has some age and some links to it. But oftentimes they have like maybe less than 10 referring domains, and like they have some value but not a lot of juice. And those I'll hit those with tier twos. Again, like in that case, I'm not spamming. That's PBN links to tier 2. But in that case, I'll maybe buy like a 10 PBN link package from somebody. Again, like I'm not using my own PBN links for this because I don't want to create a massive footprint in my network. But if you're sending 10 good PBN links to a very niche authority site that maybe you have, maybe you scraped a local newspaper or a local university, and this site has one really good link on it that gives local relevance, but that's it. And it's just, it's not worth spending, $50 on a PBN build based on that one link. So so you spend your $50 on your PBN build, and you spend an extra $50 on tier 2 PBN links, and now you've got a pretty solid location-specific site. That's one other way that I like to use tiered links.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Ken, Kendrick said, I haven't used GSA in so long. I'd like to try a suggestion of using blog comments on some T3 indexing. What would you suggest to get started? Do I need to buy a list or some decent blog comment sites for some decent blog comment sites? I know whenever we run the stuff, we use Grind's list. Um, I like Grindstone. He's a good dude. I've spoke with him quite a few times, and um, yeah, it seems to
Yeah,
be a
Grandless definitely works. Using GSA, I mean, there's a lot going on there with the indexing, setting up the indexing for the links, and I mean, if you're starting off like come from complete scratch and never really going with GSA, I'd recommend finding someone who's experienced with GSA already running it with a good list and teaming up with them to test some campaigns out. Unless you already have it all set up, but I mean, you could run a whole training course on GSA, easy.
yeah, for sure. Brian asked, you guys have a promo code for Grindless? I know you used to have something. I don't. Man, I know he's in the I don't know, hit him up on Skype. He might hook you up. I know he's actually been like closing certain lists to try to keep them non-saturated, if you will.
Yeah, I know there's like a lot of group buys out there that end up saturating lists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I run my links to a WordPress site, which is tied to IFTTT, plus send the WordPress site through OnlyWire. Is that a good use of links? Are you seeing results from it? Because that's gonna be yeah. But then hell yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's a good use of links.
Wait,
That's the
can you
I
read
know
that
that
again?
I run my links to a WordPress site, which is tied to IFTTT, plus send the WordPress site through OnlyWire.
Okay, so
Tier 1.
you're
I have
only using one tier. Here's your WordPress site. Here's your IFTTT. That's what that says. Um, and here's your OnlyWire, which basically does the same thing as IFTTT. So I mean,
They send the
that's not
WordPress
really a
through
tiered linking
OnlyWire.
campaign.
No, they send the
Oh,
WordPress through OnlyWire, so OnlyWire's linking to the WordPress,
Oh, okay, sorry.
is what they're saying.
So we've got like a money site over here that's getting OnlyWire.
I
Like
guess if
that.
that's what that is, yeah.
And this is your. So we're talking WordPress.com site,
Yeah, yeah, I believe so.
and then through IFTTT.
Yes,
Yeah,
WordPress.
that makes sense. I mean, it does come to at the end of the day, these posts might not be getting indexed because your tier 3 is contextuals. um, but they're on social sites. Social sites usually get indexed more than like Web 2.0s. But
Yeah, it really depends on your OnlyWire setup, mostly, I would say.
yeah, but if IFTTT is tier 3, not that I'd ever really advocate tier 4, but you could try indexing those, or at least make sure that they're getting indexed.
awesome.
Add some
So,
topical relevance out here.
so yeah, the best way to quantify if your stuff's working is if it's working. I understand one of your ideas validated, right? But no, absolutely, we're not going to embarrass you. I understand the idea of wanting to pitch something off to someone else and validate an idea or a strategy. But if you're seeing movement, when using that as part of your strategy, then I would not modify the strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, nice work, man.
And there's
Um,
so many ways to rank sites with links. There's definitely not one way, so if it works, that's really what matters most. That's how you know what you're doing.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's how we figure this stuff out, and then we of course share with each other in like a little like mastermind environment. I would call it a little mastermind environment, just because it's fun and we share stuff like that. And sometimes, I'll steal something someone else suggests or vice versa, and how you test and validate strategies, right? So
Uh,
that's awesome.
I don't know if anyone read this out loud, but thanks, Clint. The name of the GSA add-on that I was trying to think of is SER Engines. That's the Web 2.0 add-on. So that basically does what FCS does, but it's inside GSA. So thanks, Clint.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do one more.
If there's no more questions, we will shut it down. Oh, wow, we are almost an hour, and I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. All right, guys. Well, thanks everyone for showing up, and hopefully you got some value out of the tiered linking discussions. There's a lot of actionable stuff there, so enjoy it, consume it, and we will see you next week. If we did miss any questions, just drop them in the group. We'll be happy to help. All right, guys. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Right.